Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of one of Cal Chichester's favorite bands, one of Cal's favorite bands.
Eat the booty like Pac-Man!
The 1975, with the amazing title, I like it when you sleep, for you are so beautiful, yet so unaware of it. The creepiest creeper album title I've ever heard in my entire life. This is the sophomore full-length LP from this UK pop rock outfit, and I can't really say I enjoyed their debut. I think there were a few decent singles off of this thing, but for the most part, as an entire record, I thought the songs and the production were just a little too clean, slick, and sanitary to really suck me in. And I can't really say I was intrigued to listen to this new LP either, especially since the cover of this new album and the cover of the band's last album are almost identical. And just to me, that communicates, well, wouldn't this just be like the same album over again? Isn't this just like simply a sequel or something? But you guys are really insistent that I try this thing out and that I hear this thing and that I review this thing. And usually when I get so many requests for a group that I have not expressly said before that I enjoy, or I haven't like really reviewed thoroughly before, maybe there's been some kind of change of pace, maybe some reason to celebrate, maybe something to be excited about. You know, the band could have turned a new leaf, and I'm open to enjoying the music of a group that I didn't previously enjoy. Not everybody makes the same music or the same sound forever. Change is inevitable, so was there a change here, and did it appeal to me? Well, on this new project over here, the band's sound is still pretty far from original. I don't think they've come any closer to putting together a distinct sound that I recognize as being, oh, this is what a 1975 song is. I instantly recognize this band as the 1975. But they are sounding much less like the simple, basic, overly sanitized pop rock band that they were on their last record. Right from the gate, this record hits me with a series of songs that are very funky, playful pop throwbacks. Not really from 1975, more like from 1985. Specifically on the song Love Me, which sounds borrowed straight out of the Huey Lewis and the News playbook. Not only that, but it seems like 1975 are taking a cue from artists like Mark Ronson, who also pulled from that playbook, or people like Carly Rae Jepsen, who also pulled from a similar era of pop music on her latest record. You know, more from artists like Paula Abdul, but it seems like in the mainstream, the 80s are having a little comeback. But in the case of this Love Me song, I think the 1975 are a little more bombastic with it. I love just the gunshot snares on this thing, those are some really nice guitar licks. Really sweet and sour rhythm guitar right there. And the bass has a great groove to it. The 1975 came through with a track on this thing that I thought was fantastic. So already we're off to a really great start. The band goes much smoother on the song Ugh, which is a track that I think could have fit a little more snugly into their last full-length album, though it does seem to have still an 80s throwback vibe to it, and the guitars, even though the song is a lot lighter than that Love Me track, are still pretty flavorful. The synths are glistening, plus the very tight bass and drum groove on this track seems a little Michael Jackson inspired, and even though it is a little overly sugary, I like the song She's American Too. I thought the moment in the refrain where the band is singing about having her teeth, or having his teeth fixed, was pretty funny. So we're not even done with the first half of the LP, and there are already some good pop highlights on here. But there are some softer cuts in the first half here that I don't really care for at all. Here, the band really fails to appeal to me in any kind of way, like on the song Change of Heart. The very stiff drum machine beats and the ethereal instrumentation and the cloying lyrics on this thing are just all borderline sickening. However, I don't really mind the ballad on here, If I Believe You, mostly because it seems like such a weird combination of sounds, some of which the 1975 might have picked up on accidentally, I'm not sure. It's like the band is fusing slow, sensual R&B with the kind of ultra vulnerable ballad writing that you would catch from an artist like Perfume Genius, and then there's like a big gospel-style chorus finish that came out of nowhere. And there are some religious themes turning up in the lyrics here with a, love interest tie-in. It's definitely one of the better tunes on this thing. Though, still, again, I wish the vocals on this thing had a little bit more grit, conviction, fire, or maybe sort of portrayed a little bit more vulnerability. Most of the time, they just kind of have this very smooth, effeminate demeanor to them that just seems so dime a dozen these days when you're listening to a lot of male singers in the top 40. The band pulls another left hook and takes a risk with the song Please Be Naked, one of a couple tracks on here that I totally did not expect to just be instrumental and sort of electronic too. Even the title track, what I thought was going to be more of a centerpiece on here, turns out to be a little bit more than a detour, with some very sweet and somewhat bubbly electronics. Considering that this record is just over an hour long, the 1975, not previously a band that I would want to hear a full-length album from, much less a full-length album that is an hour long, so I'm kind of sitting here thinking, has the band really shown up until this point that they can write an hour of material that is fantastic from beginning to end? At least one of these tracks could have been excusable if it was a short, concise record, and especially if it was kind of transitioning the record from one mood or one sound or one batch of tracks to another. But instead, it just kind of drowns in a sea of songs which really could have been cut back. Mostly toward the tail end, though. After Please Be Naked, I don't mind the sequencing here. The song right after this, Lost My Head, the band, I think, takes another risk and takes things down a bit of a shoegazy road. Although the track does run pretty long and the end is sort of flaccid because I feel like the band has sort of done everything they can in terms of intensity and volume. It's like the 1975 genuinely wants to experiment with some of these sounds, but they don't know how to keep them intriguing or, just like continue to advance them for an entire track. But again, not every experiment or foray into another sound or genre is fulfilling, like those somewhat indie-tronic little instrumental detours I talked about. Or like on Ballad of Me and My Brain, where deeper into the track, the mix is just so filled with instrumentation, layers, and sound that it becomes an unnecessary clutter, which is also true of the song The Sound, which features these dance drum beats and these cacophonous synths and these really sunny, sugar-sweet, passion pit-esque background vocals. And the song This Must Be My Dream too. I mean, a track that is just so overloaded and simultaneously is like a good reminder of why the 80s had to end. Because not only are these sax solos and bass grooves tired today, but the band had already exhausted them at this point on the album. Why are they revisiting them with so much less oomph? There's just a point where this album stops being fun, which is a shame because it had a good start. It stops being fun and it just starts getting stale as they just rehash very uncreatively these influences that they seem to be borrowing from in the most shallow and cursory ways. Add to that the lack of distinct vocals and interesting lyrics, and then the album's last few moments are just not interesting at all as we get some of the most breezy, most easygoing cuts on the entire project that are just not engaging. There was a point with this project where I was hopeful and I was enjoying it, but it was just a small sliver of the track list here toward the beginning. I feel like this thing could have either been pared down into a great EP or a somewhat decent commercial record that is like 30 to 40 minutes in length. But instead we've got over an hour of material here. Much of it is bland, much of it is uninteresting, and much of it just borrows from a bunch of tired cliches from the 80s in the worst way. The vast majority of the time, this 80s pop pastiche has no real substance behind it. It's just a record that had a lot of potential, but the fact that it's so bloated with all these unnecessary tracks and filler, there's not a huge concept going on here. We're talking about 3-minute songs, which get old fast, especially when you're talking about a band that does not have that distinctive a sound. I'm feeling a light to decent 4 on this thing, unfortunately.
Transition! Have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You the best, you the best. What should I review next? Hit that like if you like.
The 1975, I Like It When You Sleep.
Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Hope you're doing well. Forever.